We're talking about the game. The Ohio State University versus Michigan, my favorite game in all of sports, the best rivalry in all of sports. Yes, I'm biased. I'm an Ohio State fan, always have been. Probably don't have to tell you that if you've been watching this channel over the last several months, but very excited about this version of the game in 2025. Obviously, if you're an Ohio State fan, things have not been going well versus Michigan the last, how many years now? Let's think about it. Ohio State beats Michigan in 2019, and then 2020, they don't play. I always thought that was, we'll call it a wussy move, a very wussy move by Jim Harbaugh to not play that game during the COVID year in 2020. I thought they could have played it. They were going to get destroyed. Let's be real. Ohio State, they go to the college football playoff. You know what happens there. That was the game versus what? Clemson versus Clemson, 2020. So anyway, moving on. Ohio State loses 2021, 2022, 2023. Jim Harbaugh has things rolling. You got everything with Connor Stalions and all that. And Jim Harbaugh leaves for the Los Angeles Chargers job. And then last year, you're thinking, okay, this is Ohio State's turn to turn the tables back on Michigan. And what happens? Ohio State at home, there's something like a 20, 21-point favorite, whatever it was, and they lose to Michigan 13-10. Would have been one of the worst losses in the history of Ohio State football, especially versus Michigan. Maybe the worst loss ever versus Michigan. But guess what? We had this thing called the expanded college football playoff to 12 teams. So it gave Ohio State new life. Despite losing to Michigan, Michigan didn't have a frickin' quarterback, basically. Just an embarrassing game. People are calling for Ryan Day's job, me included, not going to lie. But then Ryan Day, Ohio State, they flip the script. And Ryan Day, a coach who, let's be real, hadn't won a big game really in about 52 games. I'm not counting Indiana and all that. We're talking about Ohio State, the games that matter. The games that matter, Michigan and college football playoff games, right? And Ryan Day goes from not winning versus Michigan and not winning a college football playoff game, even though they were very close. Let's be real. 2022, they were very close versus Georgia. Had Georgia beat, if it wasn't for the field goal at the end, but also Marvin Harrison Jr. gets knocked out of that game with probably concussion-like symptoms. If they beat Georgia there, they surely beat TCU also and win the national championship. Remember, TCU loses to Georgia, what, 65-7 it was that year? Anyway, my point is, Ryan Day goes from not winning a big game for almost 4 seasons, almost 4 full seasons. Remember, because 2020, they get to the national championship game. They beat Clemson. They get destroyed by Alabama. It is what it is. But then no big wins 2021. No big wins 2022. No big wins 2023. No big wins 2024 all the way through the Michigan game. And I'm not counting Penn State, guys. I'm not counting Indiana last year. Maybe I'd count Indiana this year. But with everybody calling for Ryan Day's head, me included, because it wasn't just the losses. It was how they were losing versus Michigan. They were playing scared. They were coaching scared. They were playing into Michigan's strengths. And then something happened there. You got meetings. You got team meetings. People calling out Ryan Day, right? Like, let's open it up offensively. And the flip was switched. And it's been a different Ohio State team. It's been a different Ryan Day ever since then. They go through the college football playoff last year and smoke everybody. We're talking Tennessee. We're talking Oregon. We're talking Texas. That was a little bit of a closer game. And then we're talking Notre Dame. But that right there, Oregon was number one in the country. You're going through two SEC teams in Tennessee and Texas. Then they beat Notre Dame to win the national championship. And this year, just keeping it rolling, number one team in the country, beat Texas again in that early season game. Texas doesn't look as great, but Ohio State's schedule this year, let's be real, has been pretty bad. Pretty bad. Not really their fault. Penn State was down. Wisconsin's down. Michigan coming up should be a good game. Texas was a good game. Washington was a pretty tough game, relatively speaking. Illinois was a relatively tough game. Those are kind of top 25 type teams. Just outside of it, whatever it is, Washington was tough. That was a game that still kind of mattered in the fourth quarter. Illinois, they never really had any problems, but Illinois is a pretty good team. But look, Ohio State last year played Oregon regular season. They played a good Penn State team regular season. They played Indiana regular season. Next year, they have a really tough schedule. But this year, the schedule is not good. I think we all know for Ohio State, but that doesn't mean they're not the best team in the country, right? They've been able to kind of load manage. Look at last week. Their two best wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, not playing in the game. We know they're going to play versus Michigan. I just read an article. They'll be practicing mental reps. Come on. We know they're going to play versus Michigan. Tate should be a top 10 pick, you would think, in next year's draft. And Jeremiah Smith, the draft after that. Remember, Jeremiah Smith is only a sophomore. But anyway, the title of this video, I'm glad Michigan is good again. The game needed it. I'm 43 years old. I grew up with the John Cooper era of Ohio State football. Ohio State always lost to Michigan. They always lost to Lloyd Carr. They had great teams. They were always 10-1, 11-0, whatever it was. Michigan seemed to always be 8-3 or 9-2 entering that game. Sometimes even, what's the math there? 7-4. It seemed like Ohio State was always favored. They always should have won, and they never won. I mean, whatever the record was, I think John Cooper won one or two games, maybe a tie versus Michigan. It was really bad with great Ohio State teams. John Cooper should have won at least one national championship. So then let's talk about moving forward there. Jim Tressel changed everything. There's a reason Jim Tressel's my favorite coach in the history of Ohio State football. My favorite coach really in any sport. I love the fact that when I'm driving back home to my home state of Ohio, which I'll be doing here tomorrow for Thanksgiving to see my family, I love seeing the fact that our lieutenant governor right now of Ohio is none other than Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel got to Ohio State and everything changed. Just started whomping Michigan. I think he lost one time. Don't quote me on that, whatever it was. Just 10-1 or something like that. Just smoked Michigan. Okay? And then Ohio State has the year where, look, after the tattoos and all that, Tressel is forced to leave. And you have the Luke Fickell year. But then you have Urban Meyer coming. Urban Meyer goes 7-0 versus Michigan. So remember, Jim Tressel dominates Michigan. Jim Tressel wins a national championship 2002. Urban Meyer totally dominates Michigan 7-0. Urban Meyer wins a national championship 2014. And then Ryan Day's very good versus Michigan up until 2020 when they don't play because of COVID. But then after that, he's lost every game to Michigan. But here's the thing. This was such a great rivalry growing up, even though Ohio State had the short end of the stick versus Michigan. But then for about 2 decades, start with Tressel, whenever that was, 2001 or so, and go all the way until 2021. Ohio State frickin' owned the rivalry. It wasn't even a rivalry anymore. Honestly, there's a couple good games in there. 2006, you had the JT Barrett game with the spot. I mean, there were some good games in there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Michigan was non-competitive. But for Ohio State to go on whatever run it was, like 19-1, or don't quote me on that, but it was something like that for 2 decades, the game had really lost its luster. I remember being on the radio in St. Louis here, Orlando Pace was on with us. This was probably, no, this is what, 2021, after the game. And Orlando Pace, obviously, Buckeye legend, NFL Hall of Famer, grew up about an hour or so from me. He's Sandusky, Ohio. I'm Toledo, Ohio. And I remember saying to him, and I was serious. I meant it when I said this. I said, you know what? I hate to say this as a Buckeye fan, and I hate to say this to a former great Buckeye player, but I kind of felt like Michigan had to win that game in 2021. For the rivalry, Michigan needed to win it. And I truly believe that. You need both teams to be good to have a legit rivalry. And he kind of laughed and he kind of agreed. Don't get me wrong. I didn't want Michigan to go on and win again in 22, 23, especially last year when Ohio State had everything going for them. 3-touchdown favorite, whatever it was. But big picture, we need the game to be the game again. And it's getting back to that. I remember that HBO documentary. It was probably about 25 years ago. You should watch it if you haven't. It's so good on the history of Ohio State, Michigan, and Woody and Bo, the 10-year war. There was a part about it, about Toledo, where I'm from, which is the epicenter of the rivalry of the game because it's 50% Michigan fans, it's 50% Ohio State fans. They have stores there called the Ohio State Michigan store. It's truly 50-50 because, look, you're in the state of Ohio. Like the end of my street growing up was the Michigan line was about 500 yards away. So we're in Ohio, but we're 2.5 hours from Columbus. We're only about 40 minutes from Ann Arbor. So you drive up and down the street and you'd see half Ohio State flags, half Michigan flags. We'd have Ohio State, Michigan days at school for the rivalry week where you'd wear your Ohio State gear or your Michigan gear. It was awesome. And it means so much. It was ranked by Sports Illustrated years ago as the best rivalry in all of sports. And I still think it is, but it had lost its luster for a while because Michigan could never win the game. And then last year, everything with the flag planting, look, I love police officers. There were some rent-a-cops out there with the pepper spray. That wasn't necessary. And then, of course, it was called, it was so embarrassing. It was the worst thing ever. And I just said, shut up. If you know anything about Ohio State, Michigan, I don't want people to get hurt, but the fighting is part of it. Ohio State ripping down the banner at Michigan Stadium at the Big House. David Boston and Charles Woodson going at it. They always chirp at midfield before the game. Okay, did it get a little out of hand with the pepper spray? I understand that, but that's the rivalry. And I wasn't mad at Ohio State for getting pissed at Michigan planting the flag. I wasn't mad at Michigan for planting the flag. Ohio State, do a better job of actually defending your turf. Don't allow Michigan to be able to plant the flag after a win when Michigan has nothing going for them, when you're a 3-touchdown favorite, when you should have smoked Michigan last year. So, and again, and I said, just stop with the pearl clutching. And you knew Fox was going to use all that footage of the flag planting and the fighting for their promotions. And sure enough, I saw it. Just started this past week, whatever it was, getting ready for Ohio State, Michigan. Of course, Fox is using all the footage from the fight and the flag planting to promote the game, as they should, by the way. So, got a couple people in the chat here. Jeff Castle says, afternoon, Charlie. I got a woo pig suey here. Is that what that is? Should it be different? Woo pig suey or WSP? Either way, yo! What's up, Charlie? Can't stay getting on a plane. I hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving. You too, Ace. What do you do for fun? Are you trying to date me, Edwin? I talk about football for fun. Who's your favorite player? Peppy. How about Ohio State, Michigan? Favorite player? Eddie George growing up. Big Laurinaitis fan, as Laurinaitis then became a St. Louis Ram, and I covered him. Very good guy as well. Okay, so I looked. Ohio State, 9.5-point favorite. 11 a.m. game Central. 31 degrees it's supposed to be in Ann Arbor. 11-0 Ohio State, 8-0 in the Big Ten versus 9-2 Michigan, 7-1 in the Big Ten. Ohio State ranked number 1 in the country. Michigan ranked 18. Michigan still with a shot for the college football playoff. Ohio State, at this point, they're a lock for the college football playoff, even if they lose. But you got the Big Ten championship game after that versus Indiana. Let me just check the standings so I don't speak out of school here. So I don't speak out of school about what's going on in the Big Ten. So Big Ten, you have Indiana and Ohio State, both 8-0. You have Oregon 7-1. You have Michigan 7-1. So I haven't checked, but look, if Indiana ends up being undefeated, if Michigan beats Ohio State and they're 8-1 in the conference, Ohio State's also 8-1 then, and Michigan State would have the tiebreaker. So Ohio State still has a lot to play for, obviously. I mean, that's an obvious statement when you're talking about playing the game versus Michigan. But in a weird way, it does kind of suck that the game doesn't matter as much because of the college football playoff. Ohio State's going to make the college football playoff regardless. So they don't have as much to play for except for bragging rights, which is everything in this rivalry. But Michigan has a ton more to play for this week in terms of getting to the college football playoff, getting to the Big Ten championship game, if they're able to. And I should have done my research there, but obviously you also have Oregon at 7-1 and Michigan at 7-1 entering the week. Michigan's losses, you have a non-conference loss to SEC Oklahoma, and you have a loss at USC for Michigan, but Michigan and Oregon did not play. Michigan did not play Indiana. Ohio State did not play Indiana this year. So there you go. And again, don't quote me on all that tiebreaker stuff. I don't know. I'm not the expert, and I'm not the college football analyst. So we'll know soon here. But you know what? Going into the game last year, I said I'll take Michigan with the points. Never thought they'd win. And I think you kind of believe, okay, is this going to be a close game again? Would you take Michigan getting 9.5 points? That would be my initial thought. But I think something's changed. I really do. I just think something has changed with Ryan Day. But I guess you never truly know until he can beat Michigan, because everything has changed with him winning big games like he did, again, Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, Texas again this year. Those are the big games I'm talking about. I'm not going to count Illinois this year. But look, the bugaboo still he needs to get off his back is, can he get back to beating Michigan? So I'd love to say that Ryan Day has changed. I think he has. But if he doesn't beat Michigan, look, they'll still make the college football playoff, but that narrative will still be there, as it should. We all know Ohio State is the more talented team this year. They were way more talented last year. Michigan is not nearly as bad as they were last year. Michigan is better this year. But until Ryan Day does it, you still have to wonder and question if he can do it. I think that's fair. Thank you, everybody watching live, and thank you for your comments there. If you're in St. Louis, please hook up my sponsors. You see right there the Triad Bank logo. Triad Bank, best thing I ever did for my rental property business, taking all my commercial loans from a big national bank that didn't care about me to a local bank, Triad Bank. My guy, Matthew Tobin, been working with him for 5 or 6 years. Got a couple loans with them, got a line of credit off the house. We just bought a rental property in late June. I called up my guy, Matthew Tobin, on Memorial Day weekend because I hadn't done my due diligence with my approval letter. And I hated to do it on a holiday weekend, but he got me everything I needed. It was an easy process with closing. I think I've had 5, 6, 7 loans total over the last 5, 6 years with Triad Bank. We've bought some properties. We've sold some properties. I think we had 4 loans at one time going, but again, we have 2 now. But I love Triad Bank. TriadBanking.com. Just had a nice meeting with them last week. They do retail banking. I go to the Frontenac location. You have Creve Coeur as well. TriadBanking.com. Everything for commercial loans. They are the best. Customer service, relationship-based banking. And also, real quick, you got St. Louis Lawn Care, St. Louis Equipment, StlMowerRepair.com, St. Louis Lawn Care, StlLawnCare.com. Been cutting my grass for about 5 years. They'll do mulch. They do landscaping. I got some arborvitae. I got a big juniper, got a bunch of boxwoods. They'll trim the boxwoods. We get the mulch each year. If you want small engines with St. Louis Equipment, I got a trimmer. I got a Husqvarna blower. Right now, they'll do your leaves, St. Louis Lawn Care. And then you got, look, with the winter coming, you got salt. You can buy your bulk salt. Did I say salt? Salt. You can buy your bulk salt there, and they have a special. Mention you heard it from Charlie Marlow, and if you want your preseason snow plow service, mention you heard it from Charlie Marlow. You'll get 25% off, and everything for snow plowing and the salt for when the winter's coming in St. Louis. Check out St. Louis Equipment, StlMowerRepair.com, and St. Louis Lawn Care, StlLawnCare.com. All right. I won't go too much longer, but the game. I'm excited for it. Can't wait to watch. 11 o'clock Central Time, Saturday. I'm actually going to Columbus for Thanksgiving because I got some family that lives down there. So I'll be hanging out with my family in the great state of Ohio for a couple days, but I'm coming back to watch the game from the comfort of my house in St. Louis. I like the fact that they play the early game. You know, I know some people don't like it. They want night games. It's a tradition, though. Ohio State, Michigan, noon game, Eastern, 11 o'clock Central. Everybody's watching it. Incredible ratings. You'll have big noon kickoff. You'll have college game day. It'll be the talk of the town. Maybe it'll be an unbelievable game like last year. And maybe Michigan, you can't even say shock the world. Because at this point, I think a lot of people think Michigan just has Ryan Day's number. And they do. They have for the last 4 or 5 years. Ryan Day has to put up or shut up. To be the man, you have to beat the man. And that's crazy to say for the defending national champs. But at Ohio State, the things that matter, beating Michigan, winning national championships. I saw Dave Portnoy say this, and there's no way he really believes this. Would you trade last year's season, Michigan beating Ohio State, but whatever they did, win 8 games, whatever it was, or Ohio State winning the national championship, but losing to Michigan in embarrassing fashion? Nobody really believes that. Of course, you're going to take the national championship. Of course. But you can't lose to Michigan year in, year out. That's why it was fair to question Ryan Day's job last year until he won the national championship. At Ohio State, if you have top 5 rosters every year, you either have to beat Michigan more than you lose to them, or you have to win a national championship. Those are realistic expectations at Ohio State. That's fair right there. And so guess what? I don't want Ohio State to lose to Michigan this year, but Ryan Day has bought himself at least, 5 years worth of equity? 5 years. When you win a national championship, you can't be mad for at least 5 seasons. I'm sorry. Now, if they lose to Michigan every single year for the next 5 years, but again, you win a natty, you buy yourself a lot of equity. That's the way it is. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to watch the game. Drop your predictions. Comment. What do you think? Do you think Michigan's got it this year at home? Are they going to shock the world again, even though it's only a 9.5-point spread? It's nothing like last year's 3-touchdown spread, whatever it is. Are we going to see some craziness after the game, some flag planting? Hopefully no pepper spray. We shall see. Can't wait to watch this Saturday, though. It's just such a great tradition, Thanksgiving weekend. It brings back so many memories for me growing up in Ohio and watching that game. And it means so much. And I'm trying to pass the traditions on to my kids. Even though they live in St. Louis, I'm trying to grow some Buckeye fans and raise some Buckeye fans get them some Buckeye gear. We got the Ohio State blanket there, and they did enjoy watching the college football playoff run that they went on last year. So there you go, 25 minutes. Feels good. We'll end it there. We went live on horizontal YouTube and vertical YouTube for the first time. I'd never done that before. So we'll see how it goes. Love you all. Peace out. Happy Thanksgiving. And once again, thanks to my sponsors, Triad Bank, St. Louis Equipment, and St. Louis Lawn Care. We'll see ya. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Go Bucks. OHIO.